Welcome back to Gilded Fuel Wars. Last time, we saw the Warriner family wrestling with a choice between wood and coal to heat their home. Today, we're stepping out of the parlor and into the heart of the 19th century household, the kitchen. In the Gilded Age kitchen, fire wasn't just fuel, it was power. Raw, demanding, relentless power. The stove you used didn't just define your meals, it defined your day, your labor, your social standing, and sometimes, tragically, your safety. Today we return to the Warriner household around 1885. But this time we bypass the parlor, ignore the nursery. Today we go deep into the crucible of domestic life, the kitchen. The engine room of the home, where fire met labor, sweat met sustenance, and where new technology began to whisper a very dangerous, very tempting promise: liberation. Meet Margaret Warriner again, a few years older, perhaps a few lines deeper around her eyes. She's been wrestling with this particular cast iron beast, a combination wood and coal cookstove, common in middle-class homes by the 1880s for over a decade. It bakes her bread, boils gallons of wash water every Monday, heats the family's porridge, warms flat irons for pressing clothes, and dries mitts and socks in the relentless Midwestern winters. In the summer, it turns this small kitchen into a sweltering inferno.
Damp again. Figures. We'll need to open its stank damper early, getting the draft going. Pull the ash before it chokes things up.
Managing a stove like this in the 1880s wasn't just cooking, it was skilled labor. Part science, part sheer intuition, honed over years. Forget precise temperature dials or digital timers. Control came from juggling dampers, reading the flame's color, understanding how different woods or coals burned, knowing exactly when to add fuel, and interpreting the subtle groans and pops of the iron itself. This stove literacy was a crucial yet often invisible domestic skill passed down from mother to daughter. Margaret knows every quirk of this behemoth, which of the 6 stovetop lids holds the heat best for simmering, when the fire needs stoking to get the oven hot enough for bread, how to bank the coals just right so a faint warmth survives overnight without wasting precious fuel. Caroline, now 13, is her apprentice, learning, slowly, painfully.
Do I open both draft rights below or just the top one?
Just the top slide until the kindling catches proper, then close it halfway. Open the bottom check draft a crack. You want a slow, steady heat for the stew, not a roaring chimney fire.
There were hundreds of patented stove designs vying for space in American kitchens by the 1880s. Names like Monarch, Majestic, Home Comfort, each promising slight improvements in efficiency or convenience. And yet, for all their decorative nickel plating and fancy cast iron flourishes, they shared fundamental traits. They ran hot, they were inherently dirty, and they could be incredibly dangerous. Cooking was labor, hard, physical labor, lifting heavy, scalding pots of water or stew, shoveling coal, or carrying armloads of wood, constantly battling the pervasive soot that settled on walls, kettles, food, and skin. The romanticized image of Victorian domesticity often masked a daily grind that took a significant physical toll, overwhelmingly on women. And for women like Margaret, part of the growing urban middle class, but without live-in servants, without the luxury of ice boxes to preserve food easily, without many manufactured shortcuts, this labor was relentless, day in, day out.
Not too much heat under that kettle now. You want it to simmer gentle, not gallop away.
But how do you know when it's enough? The thermometer barely moves.
You learn the sounds, the smells, the way the heat feels on your face. You learn or you burn the supper, or worse.
In the Warriner kitchen, as in millions of others across America, the cook's fire ruled not only the meal, but the rhythm, the labor, and the inherent risks of every single day. Relief, it seemed, was potentially on the horizon, but not from the weather. This summer, the local Ladies' Home Club, a hub for middle-class women seeking self-improvement and social connection, was hosting something entirely new, a public demonstration of a revolutionary kitchen fuel, a fuel that promised liberation, not just from heat, but from the very tyranny of the cook stove itself.
Ladies, esteemed members of the Home Club, imagine, if you will, a kitchen transformed. A kitchen with no soot staining your pristine walls, no heavy coal bucket marring your polished floors, no more choking ash finding its way into your delicate soup. Imagine one turn of this simple valve, and your cooking fire appears, steady, clean, instantly obedient to your command.
Look at that. It just started. No smoke at all.
And what if it leaks when no one's looking? What then?
The gas range was a marvel of modern engineering for its time, and an absolute triumph of targeted marketing. Since the mid-1870s, as gas lighting became more common in cities, utility companies realized the next great frontier was the kitchen. They began aggressively wooing the person who ran it, the housewife. Demonstrations like these, often held in partnership with women's clubs or at local fairs and expositions, weren't just product launches. They were carefully orchestrated persuasion campaigns.
No more scalded arms from unpredictable flare-ups. No more scraping stubborn ash from the baseboards. Think of the precious time you'll reclaim for yourselves, for your families, for intellectual pursuits. Think of your children breathing cleaner air. Think of the sheer elegance of a modern gas-powered kitchen.
The gas range represented something deeper than mere convenience. It tapped into aspirations of modernity, cleanliness, and social status. It symbolized control, precise temperature adjustments, instant on-off, and most powerfully, it offered the promise that the relentless domestic drudgery women inherited from their mothers might not be the inevitable fate passed down to their daughters.
Your husbands, ladies, will surely appreciate the savings on fuel and the reduced risk of chimney fires. Your dinner guests will marvel at the cleanliness of your kitchen, and your backs, your poor, aching backs, they will thank you every single day.
He said no more wood chopping, Ma. Think, you could sleep an extra hour in the morning.
If the stove doesn't blow the house up first while we're sleeping.
Suspicion ran as hot as the new gas burners. Sensational stories of explosions, silent leaks, and deadly asphyxiations filled city rumor mills and newspaper columns. But alongside the warnings, testimonials also spread, often published in popular magazines like Ladies' Home Journal or shared through social networks. Stories from well-heeled households and model kitchens about how gas had revolutionized their domestic lives. Back in her own sweltering kitchen later that day, the gas company's pamphlet found its way not into the trash, but tucked carefully inside Margaret's worn recipe book. Not yet a commitment, far from it, but a seed of curiosity had been planted. And in Caroline's bright, hopeful eyes, you could see the flicker of something more. A glimpse of a possible future with less soot, less sweat, and perhaps, just perhaps, more control. The flames might have changed color in the demonstration room, but back home, the familiar, demanding fire of the coal and wood stove still ruled the room. In the Gilded Age kitchen, your stove often said as much about your social standing as your silverware or the lace on your curtains. By the late 1880s, these new fuels weren't just cooking food, they were sorting people, drawing clear lines between the haves, the have-nots, and the striving to haves.
No scorched saucepans, Mary. The mistress insists on her cream porridge being perfectly smooth. Mind the flame.
For wealthier urban families, especially those building new homes, gas was rapidly becoming the standard by the late 1880s. It was quiet, relatively clean, and instantly controllable. and crucially, the labor of managing it often fell to domestic servants, maids, and cooks who were now expected to master this new technology as part of their duties. But venture just a few blocks away into the crowded working-class tenement districts. Here, coal or cheap wood still reigned supreme by grim necessity, not by choice. Sometimes multiple families, packed into just a few rooms, had to share a single, dilapidated stove, perhaps located in a dark hallway or communal kitchen space. Cooking became a complex negotiation of time slots, fuel sharing, and simmering tensions, often carried out in unsanitary, poorly ventilated conditions. Even the pages of cookbooks subtly reflected this divide. While some recipes began to assume the quick, controllable heat of gas, many still offered instructions based on the slow buildup and intense radiant heat of coal fire. Knowing how to adapt a recipe for your specific stove and fuel type was yet another layer of essential kitchen knowledge. Using a gas recipe on a coal stove or vice versa without adjustment could lead to culinary disaster. Fuel type wasn't just utility, it shaped the very food people ate and the skills required to produce it. Gas companies, keenly aware of these distinctions, focused their advertising squarely on the aspiring middle class. Their messaging targeted respectable women, housewives like Margaret, women presumed to have some disposable income and influence over household purchasing decisions, but likely without full-time servants. The pitch was clear. Gas makes you clean, modern, efficient, and frees you from the most degrading forms of kitchen labor. Back in the Warriner kitchen, the daily reality continued.
Not like that, child. Too much paper. Not enough air below. You've got to ease it in. Let it breathe. Get the coals damp. Give it more draft from the bottom at first.
Mrs. Daly next door. Her cousin in the city got gas last winter. She told my Daly she hasn't had to scrub a flue since.
Mrs. Daly also told your father that canned peaches were better than French picked. Don't believe everything that comes with a fancy label or a city address.
Margaret, like so many women of her time and class, stood suspended between two systems, raised with the demands and dangers of wood and coal, yet increasingly exposed to the promise of gas. Caught between ingrained habit, practical skepticism, the constraints of her budget, and the deep-seated fear of trading one set of known dangers for another, potentially invisible one. No matter the fuel source, the fundamental labor of feeding a family remained. But how that labor looked, how physically taxing it was, how much dirt it generated, and who ultimately had to perform it, that was being fundamentally rewritten, burner by burner, kitchen by kitchen, across the social strata of Gilded Age America. But with every new flame came new ways to get burned, or worse. In the 1880s, the gas stove was relentlessly marketed as cleaner, safer, and more efficient than its predecessors. But early gas technology and often haphazard infrastructure delivering it carried its own unique set of dangers. Manufactured gas contained significant amounts of carbon monoxide straight from the gas works. Leaks were common in the early, often poorly sealed pipe networks. Unlike the natural gas most used today, which has an odorant added to it, manufactured gas could be harder to detect by smell alone. Explosions from accumulated gas ignited by a stray spark or match were a terrifyingly real possibility. The danger became so prevalent that popular household guides and cookbooks started including gas safety advice right alongside recipes for puddings and roasts. Knowing how to properly ventilate the kitchen or what not to do if you suspected a leak became as critical a domestic skill as knowing the right oven temperature for baking bread. City governments and the gas companies themselves struggled to keep up with the rapid expansion and inherent risks. Regulations were often inconsistent or poorly enforced. Installation practices varied wildly. Building inspectors were few and far between, and the average homemaker, often with no formal technical training, was frequently left as the first and last line of defense against a potentially lethal technology piped directly into her home.
Should a strong or unusual odor be detected, extinguish all open flames immediately. Open windows wide to ventilate the premises thoroughly, or do not strike a match or operate any electrical switch until the odor has completely dissipated. Notify the gas company at once.
But what if you don't smell it? What if you're asleep?
It was the question that haunted countless families contemplating the switch. A question often asked too late. In cities across the nation, the arrival of the gas stove brought both undeniable progress and terrifying new perils. The relentless push for domestic modernity was not a gentle, seamless transition. It was sometimes, quite literally, explosive. Today, the debate often centers on gas versus electric induction cooktops, focusing on indoor air quality, efficiency, and the lingering safety concerns associated with open flames and gas lines. The fuels change, the technologies evolve, but the core questions about risk, control, and the price of convenience in our kitchens echo down through the decades. Every kitchen was a laboratory, every meal an experiment, and every new recipe for progress came with an inherent risk.
Mrs. Jensen next door says she barely breaks a sweat when she cooks supper now. Said her kitchen's cooler by 10 degrees, maybe more, since they got the gas range put in.
Now, Mrs. Jensen also puts cinnamon in her Sunday meat pies. Not every new idea is a good one.
She also says they haven't had soot on the good parlor curtains since Easter.
It's not that I don't see the appeal, Caroline. Lord knows I do. Less lifting heavy coal, less aimless ash to haul out, less scrubbing. But I don't fancy my kitchen smelling like a leaky gas lamp either. And I know this stove. I know its moods.
You wouldn't need me to fetch wood or coal anymore.
Well, maybe I like having you fetch the fuel sometimes. Keeps you out from underfoot.
I'd still come in, just maybe cleaner, without splinters.
For Margaret, this wasn't just about comparing two appliances. It was about challenging a lifetime of ingrained knowledge, of physical habit, of control over the fires she understood, flaws and all. Giving up that hard-won mastery, even for promised ease, felt like unlearning something fundamental, something deeply connected to her role as the keeper of the household, even if that role often hurt.
Phew, hotter than blazes on there. They've got one of those new gas cookers down at the Switch House lunchroom now. Kitchen there's cool enough to take a nap in, even midday.
I'd sooner nap in a lion's den than trust my family's supper to a flimsy pipe I can't see and can't patch myself if it goes wrong.
Salesman fella was back at the yards today. Said we could maybe try a small one, just a 2-burner plate, alongside the old stove, just for the summer months maybe. See if it saves your back when it's this hot. Keep the big stove for longer days and the winter baking.
Please, Ma, just to try? It's just a different kind of flame. Same as this one, really, just quieter.
Sometimes quiet's the most dangerous sound there is.
Back in the warm lamp-lit kitchen, filled with the familiar smells of baking bread and simmering stew, the Warriners weighed their future, not with grand pronouncements or dramatic arguments, but with hesitant glances, loaded pauses, and the unspoken weight of years of daily toil.
All right. We can look at the cost for a small summer plate. Maybe. But the big stove stays. I'm not boiling the Monday wash water over some fancy blue whisper.
And so, by the cusp of the 1890s, the American kitchen, like the Warriner home itself, was often no longer a place of singular tradition. It was becoming a hybrid space, a battlefield of competing technologies, a room where old habits met new possibilities, where wood, coal, and gas didn't just fuel meals, they fueled ongoing debates about cost, about safety, about cleanliness, about modernity, and fundamentally, about the nature and value of women's labor. For Margaret Warriner, the small gas plate was an experiment, an uncertain luxury accepted perhaps more for Caroline's sake than her own. For Caroline, it likely represented the inevitable future. For thousands of families like them, caught in the messy middle of a transition, Compromise was the only constant. Some homes, particularly newer ones, or those of the more affluent, switched completely to gas. Many others, like the Warriners, held on to both systems. The familiar reliability of the old stove for heavy tasks and winter warmth, the quick convenience of gas for lighter meals or summer relief. For now. Today, the echoes of that Gilded Age burner battle continue in our own kitchens. We debate induction versus gas, electricity versus propane, weighing efficiency, cost, indoor air quality, environmental impact, and that intangible feeling of control at the cooktop. The technologies have changed dramatically, but beneath the surface, a familiar refrain persists. How much of the past or the familiar are we willing or forced to surrender for the promise of the future? In the American home, every flame, whether flickering yellow or hissing blue, tells a story. Every burner burns with the heat of choice, compromise, and consequence. And perhaps no room has carried that flame longer or burned more brightly with the politics of power and labor than the kitchen. Next time on Gilded Fuel Wars, fire gives way to filament. The Warriners, along with the rest of America, explore a dazzling, perplexing new frontier in domestic comfort and control, electric light itself. But as the soft glow of gaslight flickers in the parlor and the first sparks of electric dreams ignite on city streets, the question becomes more than just how we cook or heat. It becomes, how do we see? Hey everybody, it's Dave. Thanks for watching this second episode of Gilded Fuel Wars. A pleasure to have you here with me, of course. I hope you enjoyed that there as we talked about the kitchen and all of its wild, preposterous nonsense, politics, power, you name it. I mean, it was such a blast to put together for you. I look forward to bringing you number 3. Of course, these are a little slow in between, but that's what a passion project's all about. I want to make sure they're good for you guys, and I hope you're enjoying them. Stay tuned through the finish here as we go through a bunch of historical images pulled from the Library of Congress and other sources across the internet, Creative Commons sources, so you can see some of the actual reality of the things that we talked about today in the Cook's Fire. So hope you really enjoy it. I hope you come back, like, subscribe, share with your friends. It's just a good time all around, and I look forward to bringing you more of the Gilded Fuel Wars series right here on Gilded Steam. Thanks again.